What
We
episode?
have
They can't
got
get more.
this. So we have made it to episode number 42. If you have not changed your chat settings, if you have any questions or concerns, please change that to all panelists and attendees so we can do our best to filter questions out and all that good stuff. Today we do our Thursdays to inspire a new generation. We take a step back from our lessons to learn from power players in the industry that made a huge impact in the industry to hear their story. So I'm going to pass it over to Henry to do all the introductions, and we will kick off episode number 42.
Thanks, Mark. We continue to teach and mentor the next generation of the concert industry by passing on practical skills and life lessons. Our guest today is a great example to our students of how one gig can lead to the next, and one tour can put you on a path to being a senior level executive for a major corporation managing tours and events for a roster of 50 plus artists around the world. He's the Senior Vice President of Artist Development and Touring at Sony Music Entertainment since 2008, and has held this position at 4 other major labels. So there's a hell of a lot to learn today. Please welcome in the chat our special guest, Mr. Nick Light.
God, you make it sound so impressive.
It is impressive. It is impressive. We're really excited to have you, and we're going to get right into it because we have lots of ground to cover and we want to have a lot of time. So
You got it.
starting from the beginning, way back in New York,
Yes.
you got bit by the bug when and how? When did you know? When did you know?
I knew I wanted to be doing shows for a living at about 14 or 15 years old. I was very lucky in my high school. We could put on talent shows and we can put on coffee houses to raise money to do things for the school. The school let me have complete freedom. So I was doing talent shows twice a year, coffee houses twice a year, and that would pay for the senior trips, that would pay for proms. And I knew from that moment, this is what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be a performer, but I don't have talent, none. So I love being the behind the scenes guy. And thankfully I knew early on, this is all I ever wanted to do. So I'm Henry
and I both love that talent show beginning. We sure do. So you have a family of people, and let's just touch on that briefly now and expand on it later. But your family is kind of in this business.
Yes.
Your older brother and your older sister.
Yes. My mother's in real estate. My father was the art director of Life magazine and ran Warner Books for a while. And my brother is one of the owners of CAA, and my sister Jennifer was part of Bonnie Raitt's touring team for 10 years.
Very cool.
And worked with Harry Sandler, who is an absolute legend. So
my mentor, Mary Jo's mentor.
This is all the lights do. We don't know how to do anything else.
Right.
So
that's very cool. Can you just give us a little bit of when, you know, so you shared with us a moment where you were young and you were in the room with some hitters as just kind of hanging with your bro.
Yeah. So I was lucky. I mean, having a brother who is that big a monster in the industry, he took me to my first concert, which was the Beach Boys at Nassau Coliseum when I was 8 years old. So I was very lucky to be taken along by Rob, and you know, you'd be in the room with guys like Mitch Slater and Ron Delsner and John Scheer and Irving Azoff, and I was very lucky to be a fly on the wall and to be taken around by my brother like that. I learned early on to keep my mouth closed and my ears open. If somebody wanted to know something from me, they would ask. Otherwise, stay quiet. So. And
your brother, there's, just for perspective, there's about 10 years between you and Rob. And all those guys that you were in the room with are literally the giants of the concert producing industry at the time. And you're a little kid.
Yes.
Yes.
Little kid. But, you know, that's the benefit of being a light, I guess. I was groomed early by the best. So I am grateful for that.
And when did you get legit? What was your first gig?
My first job, real job, was at the Ritz in New York City, which is now called Webster Hall. I was very lucky. I graduated high school on a Friday, and I got the call from I think, a stage manager to tell me to be at the Ritz on Saturday at 3 o'clock for a load-in. That my first band ever was Level 42. So
cue something about you right now.
yeah. So, it was interesting. I mean, it was a great learning experience because there were 9 crew guys on that original Ritz crew, and there were 5 other guys who were brought in as extra labor. I had no concept of what a day was at the Ritz. And a normal day at the Ritz started at 3 o'clock. You'd load all the gear in. And if you don't know Webster Hall, all the gears carried up like 30 sets of marble stairs. So with no concept, you load the gear in, you set it up, you do sound check, and now it's 8 o'clock. You're just kind of banging around the building, and then showtime is at 10. It finished at 2, 3 in the morning, but you couldn't load the gear out till 5 a.m. And what was interesting to me is I was part of 5 new guys brought onto that crew as extra help. And the 4 other guys I was with bitched and complained and whined and cried all night long. It was nonstop complaining. To me, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. One, I can sit very close on stage and watch a band play up close, which was mind-boggling to me. You could drink beer on the job at the time. It was just, to me, it was the greatest experience in the world. I didn't say a word, and loadout finished as the sun was coming up, and the stage manager said thanks to the 4 guys and turned to me and told me to be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And that started my career at the Ritz, which for me, the Ritz was like going to college. I didn't go to college. I didn't have that experience, but my time at the Ritz in New York City was the best 4 years of college anybody could ever ask for the current career I have now. So I am very lucky and very blessed.
Can you expound a little bit more on how being at the Ritz was like your college education, what you got out of that, and what you learned from working?
Absolutely. So you got to figure, I'm an 18-year-old kid. I mean, I'm very lucky. I had my brother to be some guidance, but I have to now prove myself on my own. I can't live my life as Rob Light's little brother. I got to step up and do it myself. The Ritz, to me, I knew gear, I knew production, I knew the basic format of doing a show, but that's a high school show. The Ritz taught me the big leagues. I mean, that was the real deal. I learned how to put a Marshall stack together. I learned how to do drums. I learned how to do microphones. I learned lights and sound and monitors. And it was an amazing experience because you were with a different crew every night. You were with a different tour manager, a different production manager, a different road crew. And you learned some amazing things from the best, and you saw absolutely what I don't want to become from the worst. And, it's little things now, which I see still stick with me from the Ritz days. When you're looking at a stage and you've got a 6-piece band, it's amazing how many cables are actually involved. I'm talking regular guitar cables. My son, who is 12, plays the bass. And when I watch him wrap his cables at the end of practice, I could feel the hair on the back of my neck rise because he'll wrap it around his elbow, and no, that is just not how it's done. So little things like, how to wrap a cable properly are things that were instilled from me from day one, which still carry on today. It's just funny to see how it, 30 years later, it still gets to me.
Yeah. So the Ritz and Webster Hall are known for having venue or shows they maybe shouldn't have, bringing in artists there that makes our special shows. What kind of experiences did you have with
let's be fair. There? So this is 1984, and the Ritz was an 1,100 seat room at the time. So you could play Madison Square Garden, which was huge. You could play the Beacon Theater, which was big. The Ritz was just the right sweet spot. And I was lucky to do shows with Eric Clapton, the Rolling Stones, the Police, Tina Turner, Prince. I pulled up a list, I have it somewhere, of every show we did there. Every major rock and roll figure and music figure you could ever come up with. Our New Year's Eve was Stevie Ray Vaughan and Buster Poindexter. It was you know, you had the Eagles, you had Clapton. Yeah, it was a who's who of rock and roll greatness there.
Can you tell a couple of stories on who you experienced working with there and what you saw?
One of my favorites, and I'm sure people will kill me. There's Rolling Stones diehards, and not. I'm a Rolling Stones fan, but if you don't know Webster Hall, it was a giant dance hall in the late 30s and 40s. So the deck of the floor is huge. And we were doing the Rolling Stones there, and the crew picked up a habit of playing wiffle ball on the deck while the band was sound checking and setting up. So as idiots, we're playing wiffle ball, and Ronnie Wood came down from the stage and asked if he could take a swing. Of course, Ronnie, I mean, who's going to say no to Ron Wood? And then Mick came down and wanted to take a swing, and Keith comes down. And before you know it, it's Ritz crew playing the Rolling Stones and wiffle ball. Mind-boggling. I mean, when would you ever think you're going to do that? I remember once we were doing Eric Clapton, and I explained this to you guys the other day. Eric Clapton was playing the black guitar, Blackie. And when we loaded the gear on stage, you got 9 guys from the crew opening the box and seeing it. And you could feel the rays of light and greatness come off this guitar. And Eric could not have been nicer to everybody, to the staff and the crew. He had gone up to his dressing room and got lonely and bored, and came down and knocked on the tech crew's door and just asked if he could sit with us. They didn't want to be alone. So rock stars of that level, if they're going to be that cool and sit with the guys and have a beer with us, they were treated like the gods they were. And we would do anything for them. So
you had mentioned that your father was the art director of Life magazine. What advice did he give you with your career?
My father, I laugh because I have a habit of always roasting my father whenever I can, and getting my father to laugh could be the greatest joy of my life. So I am always busting his nuts. But there are certain things he instilled from the beginning. I mean, one of his famous quotes to me, always wear a blue blazer. And I would bust. I'm in the music business. I don't need to wear a jacket. But the lesson was, be prepared. Show up for the job you want, not the job you have. Always have a pad and a pencil with me. And that seems minor, but it is the most major thing around. He told me to have a business card, just a plain, my name and phone number, not, Nick Light, executive CEO of, no, name and phone number. And I would make fun of my dad relentlessly for this, and I would imitate him, and getting him to laugh about it was amazing. But the lessons he taught, they hold true today. So if I was talking to a young kid trying to get into tour management, have a business card, have a pad and a piece of paper. If you introduce yourself to somebody, get their card, write a handwritten note, say thank you. It goes a long, long way. And my father has been telling me that, God, for as long as I can remember.
Nice. So we talked about your college years at the Ritz, but how did you move into your first tour and getting on the road?
Well, my very first tour I ever did, I drove a van for the band Kid Creole and the Coconuts, which it just happened to be. We were doing 4 nights of them at the Ritz. And I am a lover of ska music, or any music that has horns in it. So I was very involved, and I stuck myself in the middle of all things Kid Creole. And when the opportunity came up that they needed a van driver, the tour manager called me, and that was my first run. My real entrance into the touring world happened when I left the Ritz. I had done my time there, and I had moved to California. And I started, my first few months in California were quite sordid, but I ended up working for an attorney, Peter Lopez. Well, no, I should back up, because I worked for Jim Gierno at Rebel Waltz, and Jim really taught me the artist development side of things. And then from that, working for Peter Lopez, who was an attorney, he handled, at the time, an artist named Gerardo, Rico Suave, for anybody listening. That was the summer of '91, and Peter was an attorney, and as you can see, I don't really fit in an attorney's office. So after a few months working for Peter, I was sent to Brownsville, Texas, where I met an A&R guy named Chuck Reed. And I walked into the room, and Chuck is packing his clothes, and he says to me, "Nick, always call the hotel first, don't lose your receipts." And he walked out the door. And at that moment, I had now become the tour manager for Gerardo. And the Rico Suave tour, we went around the world and back again for the year of 1991.
But you had no idea that.
None. I had nothing. I literally don't know why I showed up. I was told to go by Peter with no direction that I was tour manager, just go to Brownsville. Thankfully, you know, I was a kid. I was 25 years old, and Gerardo was a few months younger than me. And I had to learn a lot of it the hard way and figure it out on the fly. You know, I was lucky I could call my brother and get some advice, but a lot of the stuff you learned by trial and error, and the mistakes you made were yours. So own up to them and learn from them. But that to me was one of the greatest experiences I have ever had in the music business.
So Nick, can you tell us, as you were going through this, you were saying that you really didn't have anyone to kind of teach you or mold you other than calling your brother.
Yeah.
But was there anyone on the road, like maybe some of the band or crew members, to kind of like, hey, we don't do it this way? Or
with Gerardo early on, I can say on that tour, I learned a lot of lessons, because we did a world tour where it was Gerardo, and then we joined some other tours. And by that time, there were some seasoned tour people that I was able to learn from. And it's a story that has stuck with me for my entire career. And thankfully, I learned it very early when I was about 25. We were on tour in the Midwest, and our hotels were all messed up. And I had 18 people in my travel party. I had no rooms, I had nothing. And I came unglued and lost my shit on the girl at the front desk. I was swearing up and down, playing tough guy, and every idiot move you could do, yelling, screaming, trying to muscle my way in. And thankfully, there was a seasoned old tour manager just watching the whole thing. And when it was all said and done, he pulled me outside and just said to me, do you feel like a big man now? Do you feel like a tough guy? You just yelled at a girl at the front desk who had nothing to do with your rooms being messed up. Okay, now go back in there and apologize, and you better hope she accepts it. And I don't want to see any of that shit ever again. And that was one of the greatest lessons I learned on tour, ever. There is always a way to work something out. There is always an agreement you can come to. Playing tough guy, trying to be a badass out there is ridiculous, foolish.
Nothing better.
So, very grateful for that.
Nothing better than somebody calling you on your shit to teach.
Well, you know what? I'm fine with somebody calling me on my shit. You need to be man enough to accept, you know what? You're right, I'm wrong. And admit you're wrong. I think you'll get a lot farther by admitting your flaws, and thanks for pointing that out. Let's move on.
I think this is a really interesting time in your career, because like you had already gone through 5 years of being a hardcore stagehand, putting together shows. So you knew the business, you knew shows, how to run a stage. And this was your first time actually, you know, leading the ship, leading an artist. Yeah. And so you're just trying to pair these new skills with what you already knew needed to happen day in and day out, right? And so, but I want to ask you about where this led you, because you started there, but then you started to tour manage other acts, and like as a gig leads to another gig, where did Rico Suave lead you on to?
Well, you know, Gerardo was 1991, which for anybody out there knows that's the peak of MTV. MTV Spring Break, the madness of MTV was at its
heyday,
absolute heyday of madness. in doing the Gerardo tour, we did every spring break, we did every MTV Party House, we did it all. And Paulie Shore happened to be, I guess, a VJ or just the voice of MTV at that time. And when the Gerardo tour came to an end, Paulie asked me to tour manage him. And you don't think of Paulie Shore as, you might think of him as a clowny actor, but at the time, Paulie was playing venues, 8,000 seats, 10,000 seats, and the Spin Doctors were our opening band. I mean, it was a big, big tour.
Amazing. What an incredible package right there of artists and comedy. And, Paulie, the Weasel, he was huge back in the day. To our students, Google it, you'll understand.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Different era.
It was also a big learning curve because one, doing the Gerardo tour, the money was good, but when now all of a sudden you have to learn how to settle a show at 10,000 seats, that's a big learning curve, big learning curve, and you don't want to mess that up. And to make it a little more difficult, you had MTV and cameras following you everywhere you went and everything you did. So there was that little area of difficulty. But I will say the Paulie Shore tour was some of the most fun you could ever have.
Give me a story. I'm a fan. I love his movies from back in the day. I'd love to know what it was like to TM a comedian, let alone someone like that.
Well, you know what? You think about it, and if you've tour managed before, you think of a big tour like if you're doing, a New Kids on the Block, it's 300 people. Paulie, it was me, Paulie, I had a road guy and a trainer on a 45-foot bus. It was amazing. Life was great. We rolled across America. MTV followed us and filmed us, and we got in trouble and lived the life of a rolling nomad in a giant bus. From Paulie's manager also managed Howie Mandel. Now, Howie is a steady 10,000 seat comedian, but Howie was a whole new level of, it was me, Howie's assistant, and a piano player, and we'd fly private jets everywhere. So that was a whole level of ease and amazement. But all very lucky, and each tour leads to the next, to the next, to the next. So.
No, but these were the formative years where you learned how to manage the business and really come up as a tour manager. So then tell me, Howie Mandel, what's next in your roster of tour managing?
The greatest one of them all. After Howie, I was doing on and off for a long time, but I was asked to do Spinal Tap, to be the tour manager of Spinal Tap. So
that's so meta.
Yeah, it is so
right.
so meta.
It's so meta.
My brother asked me to do the tour. I took it, and I took it because, listen, 30 years later, I can say I'm Ian Faith. I was the tour manager of Spinal Tap, and nobody can take that.
When they do, you'll be in it as one of the tour managers.
It was a very different tour for many reasons, and and some of it I realize now. I was 26, 27 years old, and the band, Christopher Guest and all those guys, were in their late 40s. So it's a big age gap. But was very interesting with Spinal Tap, I'd wake the guys up at 8 o'clock in the morning. They'd get dressed, they'd get the wigs on, they'd turn into the characters. They never broke character once. If I stepped out of the room and I came back in and it was just me and Nigel in the room, he was Nigel 100%. It was never Chris. They played the character till I woke him, I woke him up till I put him to bed. And it was very bizarre.
Do you still have the cricket bat?
I do still have the cricket bat. Yeah.
So awesome.
I never given that up.
I have a cricket bat charm for a charm bracelet that my husband gave me when he first found out I was a tour manager. When he
That's adorable.
I get it. It was a very unique tour because they can play as a band, but they're not a real band. You know, you think of all of us during our career have been in a van. We've all borrowed our mom and dad's car to go do dates and do gigs. These guys don't know that. They're three actors that are used to being pampered. They're not used to, hey, we got to leave, you know, it's a 16-hour bus ride. They're not used to that. They're not used to sound check, lobby call, crew call. They just didn't know.
That's what I love about you. You actually know what that life is like.
Yes. Yes. I think in the job I hold today, everything I have learned from the Ritz and my life on the road has taught me everything to be in this role right now. So yeah, that's why I say the Ritz was college for me.
That's amazing. I mean, and then this era of your life when you were tour managing is really cool because of just sort of the people that you have in your corner, the opportunities that you had, and you just took it and ran with it and put together all the life lessons that were being thrown at you. But I want to send it over to MJ to talk about your transition into a record label.
Yeah. How did you end up moving to the label side from being on the road?
Again, it comes back to the Ritz. I got pulled into the record company world by a man named Bobby Duckett, Bobby was a stagehand at the Ritz, and Bobby worked for Mercury Records. And Mercury at the time was doing a lot more promotional activities that were event driven. They were a lot more stunt oriented. They were doing live shows that record companies normally didn't do. And Bobby brought me in to kind of be the guy to build that. Very quickly, Bobby faded out and I took over Bobby's job. So that led to somewhat the creation of how we do artist development and touring now. So I would be asked to, you know, things I am proud of from my early days of the record label. The first time Bon Jovi played in Times Square, I was the guy who built that with John's crew. The first time you saw a band play David Letterman out on the street on 51st Street, I was the guy to build that, literally outside with a tape measure and mapping that out. And Mercury Records gave me a lot of freedom and trust to do that type of thing. So I was very lucky in that regard. My entire career on the record side, I've been lucky that I've had managers and presidents and bosses that trusted the work I do. I will say, partly being Rob's little brother and having a heavyweight as a family member, the desire to make the show perfect, to make a name for myself, and my standards were higher because I didn't want to disappoint him. So I take a lot of pride in giving my word and saying it's going to be done, and I guarantee it's going to be done. And that in turn led my bosses to trust me and give me the freedom.
What's the record company side like compared to the road? Like, was that a big shock?
Polar opposite. You know, I love my career in the record company, but there's something very magical, and I'll describe it, and I'm quite sure everybody on this call will know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's the one thing I miss most of being a tour manager. When you're doing a big tour and you've got everything set, 5 o'clock, the band's gone to catering, 6 o'clock, you feel that energy start. Band's in catering, you know the fans are in the crowd, out in the parking lot starting to drink and get ready, you know doors are opening, your tickets are done, and there's that energy that's building, and it's 7. And the problems you're dealing with, they're fun problems, they're pain in the ass, but there's that energy that comes with it. And there's no replacing that energy from 6 p.m. till lights down at 8 o'clock. There's no other way to replace that. That is what I miss the most. But being at a record label, I mean, you're given the opportunity to do events that you couldn't normally do. Closing Times Square with Bon Jovi, it had never been done before. The fact the record company gave me $500,000 to do that was, okay, great, sure, we'll build it, not a problem. You know, a plus side, having a touring background, when the label would come up with bizarre and weird things. Hey, Nick, can you put the band Kiss under the Brooklyn Bridge? Sure we can. Not a problem. Nick, I need to close a street in London because we want to do Madonna at the Coco Theater. Sure, no problem. We can take care of that. I need a helicopter. Not a problem. All those skills come into play now. So it's been a great springboard to the career I hold now.
We're
I
also
think that's
smiling because we all have gotten that phone call like, hey, the label has this idea for a show.
Right.
You're like,
Pull that off.
like, how am I gonna do that? But
Yeah,
I think,
you know, with enough money you can pull off anything. So
yes. I think that's a really good point too. It's like you bring a lot to the table when you've worked on both sides of the fence. You get a real 360-degree view of how to do things. And it's, you know, it's nice when you find people that value that.
Well, I think early on in my career, I think the difference, I think this is why I have a career doing what I do. Early on, when I was brought into the record company side, these were marketing executives, sales executives, publicity. Nobody dealt with touring. And it's not that touring is all that difficult, but it has its own language, its own rhythm, its own way of doing things, that if you didn't understand it, you could really rock the boat and cause yourself more trouble and grief. So early in my career, I was the bridge to the executive world, to the touring world. You know, as anybody in the touring industry knows, us label guys, we've got an ego and an attitude, and, you know, we're the label. So that happens. Having somebody who can speak the language of a tour person, who can bridge that gap and smooth the way, I think it's a must. I don't think you can function without that.
And that's so nice when you're on the touring side and there's a label person that gets it. You know, when you look forward to them showing up, you're like, oh,
you know, listen, I've been very lucky because a lot of the tour managers on the bigger tours now that I get to work with, when I have new people, will openly welcome them to come down. You're going to be stamping passes. You're going to be running tickets. You're going to see what happens. And you could try to teach somebody all this stuff. You can try and teach them about respect on the bus and sleep with your feet facing forward and one hand for the bus. You only learn it when you're in it. You've got to get in there and do it the hard way and get dirty.
Yeah. So you started with Mercury, and then what was your trajectory after that?
I was recruited to MCA Records.
When did you go to MCA?
Well, it
sorry
was
for
right
the
when
brain breaker.
I know it was right when the Who was doing the Quadrophenia tour.
Okay.
So if anybody can remember when that was the time, because I remember getting there thinking, I get to work with the Who doing Quadrophenia. I could cry. It was, so I was recruited to MCA and built the department there. I did that for a while, and then MCA folded into MCA Geffen Interscope. And at that point, I went to work for Irving Azoff as his right arm for a while on the management side.
No big deal.
And I was recruited from there by Dermot Quinn and Tom Wally to go, and Phil Corderero, to go to Warner Brothers and set up this department at Warner Brothers.
Do you ever
Phil Q?
You work with anybody that's like on the bottom? Because like you're just naming all of these powerhouses that are literally giants in this industry now, and you were, you know, you had them in your corner in an amazing time. We were talking 96. The music industry was a really great era.
Well, let's be fair and honest here. I have a last name that carries some weight. My brother, who is very powerful, I can't say that for the most part, it was the greatest being his little brother, but there was some downside to that. I mean, I'm very lucky that, yeah, I met guys like Phil Corderero and Tom Wally because of Rob, but I also had to work twice as hard to make a name for myself, because all the touring in the world, real tour people are not going to give a crap that I'm Rob Light's brother. You either have to stand on your own 2 feet and prove yourself and be true to your word, or you're nothing. So I was lucky and blessed that, yes, having a great last name helped, but you have to stand on your own 2 feet and deliver.
At this point in your career, you're 12 years in, you've done enough to really build up your name on your own. You know, you've done your time. So Doug, take it from here.
Yeah, Nick, you said something that is a recurring theme amongst our guests, and that's the idea of having a working knowledge of other areas of the industry, making you better at doing what you do better.
Yeah.
And having a working understanding of what touring is like is going to make you more sympathetic to the decisions that you make on the label side that are going to affect them, you know, people's lives and experience on the road.
1000%. And I'll give you a few examples of where that comes in. I've had managers come to me saying, I need 200 grand to tour and I'm pushing for a van. No, Nick, you don't understand. I can't get 5 guys in a van and all the gear and blah, blah, blah. You know what, Mr. Manager, I'm going to come down and show you how to do it. I'll bring tools. I'll show you how to build a platform. I've done it. I've built it. So taking that angle doesn't work. I will say now, as I'm a little more seasoned, I will say to a lot of managers, if you're fair and honest with me, I will be fair and honest with you. I like the touring department now to be a safe place for a manager to feel they can speak freely. In my office, you can avoid the politics of corporate for a minute. I'm a road guy. You can tell me, you know what, Nick, I can't double up guys anymore. I can't put the singer in with this. I need a solid, man. I need an extra 5 grand for a room. I understand. I get it. I have been in your position. I understand. You were fair and open. You got it. And I think that creates a level of trust between the label, the manager, and the guys out on the road. I think having that ability that you know you can speak freely, that you can talk to this man and know he's one of you. You've been there. You can't put a price tag on that.
Right. And that must be refreshing from both sides to have that relationship approached more as a collective rather than an area of conflict, which it often can be. You know, the management.
It can be a brutal. It can be a really ugly area of conflict because, unfortunately, you know, a band will come and ask for money and they'll ask for tour support, and you know, sometimes I got to say no. You know, I have learned there's 1,000 ways to say no to somebody and still make them feel pretty good about that answer. Everything doesn't have to be a conflict. You can reach middle ground, but I think you have to set that tone early on, and you have to earn that trust from the manager that I'm not blowing smoke. You know, if you're going to do me a solid here, when you need that favor, I'm going to be there for you.
Right. And so let's say, because you must deal with a lot of new managers, and
yes,
you know, we all know that the breadth of experience of a band or an artist manager can vary as widely as they come. You know,
yeah.
It could be somebody who's been in the industry 40 years or somebody who's never managed an artist before. So how do you approach it when somebody new comes to your table?
I'll give an example. The artist Khalid has a manager, Courtney Stewart. Courtney came in the first day and walked into my office, and we had that same conversation, fair and honest with me, fair and honest with you. He said flat out, Nick, I don't know anything about touring. I know nothing. Will you teach me? The most refreshing words I have ever heard. I am happy to teach you every single thing I know. One, that makes our bond super tight. It gives me the ability to put and advise, go with this production manager, go with this tour manager. These are the A-line people. And a manager that is hungry to learn, it's the greatest thing in the world because the relationship's different. It's not combative, it's a team. And I am happy to teach anybody anything. My door is always open, and I am more than willing to sit with managers to do that. I find in today's environment, a lot of the artists are getting younger, and I mean younger like teens. A lot of these artists are managed by their friends. So there is no background at all. It does get very difficult when you've got a manager who is somebody's friend who has watched MTV Cribs and they think they know everything and they want to be the next Irving Azoff, and I'm rolling in and I'm going to conquer the planet by force. It's disappointing. It happens, but you want to go by force? Okay, I'm happy to argue with you if you want, but it's going to get you nowhere. And I don't like it that way, and I'm happy to teach and support and handhold. It's fine. It would be a lot easier, you know. Yeah. And there's a lot of little subtle things, and you know, these are tour manager 101, which is perfect. Little things. Be on time. I am the most anal about time, and I'm talking down to minutes. The call today was at 11 o'clock my time. I was logged on to the call at 10:40 because logging on 5 minutes early, I'm already late. You know, these young managers need to know you called a meeting. You asked me to be at a specific place at a specific time. Show up. You've got a phone. Text if you're late. Basic common sense. And some don't have that.
Yeah. So, you know, when we were talking yesterday, you almost described your role as a tour manager on the label side. Can you give us just a brief summary of what your roles are in practice?
You know, describing my department to a new manager is the best way to say we're in-house tour management. So if we've got a young act that brand spanking new, the promotional tour is going to start, we're going to send them around the world. My department will create the budget because the manager won't know. We will book flights, we will book cars, we will book hotels, we will manage the daily schedule of when you're going to interview at radio, when you're going to interview at press, when you're going to do online. We handle all of that in-house. We'll literally teach you how to put your band together. Some of these TikTok stars have no clue. They've never put a band together. We will even teach you how to use in-ear monitor systems, how to get ready for a television performance. Some acts have no concept that if you're playing the Tonight Show, I really don't care about the 200 people in the audience. I care about the 20 million people in the viewing audience. Mm-hmm. If nobody's taught you that, you just don't know. So the hand-holding on that, and even taking an artist to Guitar Center to buy a guitar. I've seen some artists show up with literally, you know, the term a signer guitar, a beater guitar, $100 guitar you get out of a trip, you know, something to put an autograph on. That's what they're coming to play with. We'll literally take them down and handhold them and show them how to buy gear, introduce them to vendors to become sponsored. So I like to look at that as in-house tour management. We will teach you all of that.
Right. And you know, from the tour management side, I'm sure you would agree, maintaining a great relationship with the people you work with on the label side is imperative because...
It is. And this is going to sound a bit cold, but we, you know, from the label side, we've got 45 records we're working. So if I've got an artist that, great, you're signed and I've got a full press day and you get ego of, I don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do morning radio. I don't want to do press after lunch because I want to take it. Okay, that's fine. I've got 47 other bands who will sell their soul to get drive time radio. So let's get to work, stop your complaining, and go. I do think, though, from being a touring person to becoming a record executive, that relationship and bond you have with an artist, it's a little different. Because if you're willing to get your hands dirty and roll in a van and, you know, move gear, you've got a bond with an artist that's just, it's a little different than executive to artist. You're putting sweat in there. You're putting, you know, labor hours in. You're putting some grunt work in that an artist sees you're really on their team. And it's a different relationship. Very special, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of as an extension of that, something that I was curious about is there seems to be this phenomenon the artist is signed by a specific A&R on a specific label, and maybe they write a great record, they lay it down, and there's just a real buzz. You can feel that even from as far distant as the touring crew. You get a sense for something's really bubbling.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that A&R gets headhunted or pinched from another label, and either the record stays with the old label, or and then suddenly just all that heat, all that energy dissipates. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, what happened, I mean, you think about it. So let's say our A&R man signs band X. As a company, we are excited. We're behind the record. We feel ownership of this record. We feel involvement of this record. This is our record. We feel that same excitement the rest of the world is feeling. It is ours. We're going to make it happen. Now, A&R man gets recruited by Warner Brothers. He goes and takes the record to Warner Brothers. Well, the head of marketing and the marketing team does not feel the same passion the RCA marketing team feels.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Does the record always move with you? If the A&R guy is pinched, does the record always go?
Based on the contract,
right? If the deal's with another, So how does that? It varies, right?
That is out of my realm. I won't even speak to that.
Got it.
Not me. But if you lose the excitement, I mean, one of my favorite bands in the world is Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. And the record Hearts of Stone was one of these records that was building and bubbling. And this was it. This was going to be his breakout record to make him the next Springsteen. But the staff at Columbia Records turned over at that time. So you got a new head of marketing, a new president, a new head of radio. And they didn't feel the same passion for that record. They didn't feel the same involvement for that record. They didn't feel the same team and love and devotion. And the record came out and it went by the way. It was what it was. And there was whatever. It's not mine. And that happens. I mean, if you don't have people championing, being a champion for your record, it can slip through the cracks. You want people to feel part of the project. You want them to believe wholeheartedly in that project.
Mm-hmm. And I guess to that point, as a tour manager, and somebody explained this to me early on, and it made a big impact on how I approach my job. If you want to transpose it into a corporate environment, you're the face of the artist in many of their business dealings, whether it be with the local production, the record label, whoever else it is. Oftentimes people that are working in a venue or a label office will not interface with the artist. So, bad names get attributed to the artist and not the crew, regardless of who it was who was being a dick that day.
It's very interesting you say you become the face of the artist. I try and teach everybody in my crew, you can take 20 years to build a reputation. This is the coolest guy in the world. He's great. His team is great. It takes you 2.5 seconds to destroy your reputation, and that will stick with you like glue. When you roll into a venue and you treat the lowest man just as good as you treat the highest man, that reputation spreads. That shop steward is calling the next 5 venues down the line saying, you know what, Nick was easy to work with, good guy, take care of him. Or you can very easily make the call and say, you know what, that dude's an asshole, he's a record company snob, just keep him out of your hair and don't let him in. That reputation can go far and wide and deep. So yes, you will become a face to that artist sometimes, and it's your responsibility to act like a professional and be an ambassador and pave the way for them. And honestly, if you're out there as an ex-tour person, if I see a tour manager messing up, I see a crew guy, it's my responsibility to listen, this can't happen. Because the reputation you now affect is the artist, not just yours. I don't want it rolling through town, oh, singer XYZ is a pain in the ass. Well, that artist isn't a pain, it's his staff.
Right.
So
absolutely. And just purely in a selfish thread, and it's a point we've made countless times on this webinar series. You know, I've been recommended for gigs from people who work in labels, or their other artists, because of a good working relationship, you know, we established. So, you know,
I can tell you right now, I have a roster of tour managers I love. I have a roster of production managers I love, and they go first. I recommend them for everything. The one thing I do wish in the touring world we had more of is women. I do not have enough touring women.
We're out here. We got you. There's tons. Call us. We have them. We got big long lists.
Well, I would appreciate that, because, you know, as you get younger female artists that come up, they want women. They don't want men banging around.
That's correct.
And I get it. And, you know, I have 5 or 6 that I trust, but I just don't know, and I would be welcome to have them.
Come back to us, and we'd be happy to send you all levels of experience, all you know, all ages, shapes, colors, and sizes, all levels of experience, all different positions. We ladies are out here. Yes,
and I think that's something we've talked about too, is like, and that's, you make a great point sort of between the lines there, Nick. It's like, it's all about expanding your circles.
Right.
You know, and that's how more, oh my God, the women are blowing up the chat right now.
We're out here. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, and I know that the channel is Tour Management 101, but a point I want to bring up, which expands into any of this world. You know, we get a lot of interns at Sony. You know, there's a new cycle that comes through, 5-10 interns a quarter. And every year I give the same speech to the interns. Listen, all the tours are in a folder. I'm anal. Everything's got a folder. It's on my desk. It's all P-touched and laid out for you. It's all right there. I get to the office at 7:30 every day like clockwork. And I'll tell the interns, this is the Madonna tour. Everything you want to know. The deal memos, everything is right here. Take the folder home, make notes, and let's talk about it the next day. None of them do it. None.
I would have lost my mind if somebody told me I could do that. When
if I could have taken home somebody's binder
at 6 in the morning the next day with it,
you know, like a fiend.
When I first started, my brother told me, if you get a chance to read everything you can get. Suck up as much knowledge as possible.
And I used to read with as much experience as I had when Harry Sandler, when I became his sidekick and was able to work under his mentorship, as much information. I was already the VP of marketing for a huge promoter when he poached me. I still would take his binders and just sit in his office and mine for information that I didn't know existed. You know what I mean? I wasn't looking for what I knew. I was looking for things I didn't know.
It blows my mind that some of these interns, you're at Sony World headquarters. You're given a free pad. It's right here. And
it's like being at the library.
Where's your office? I'm coming.
You know,
right, we're all coming.
I know. I was like, I'll come and look through those binders. Hang out.
Highest rated team of interns headed your way right now. We're coming.
Talking of free passes, if you saw, I'm going to give you a leading question here, but if you saw 2 resumes, like for like resumes, but one had touring experience and one did not, would you lean, you know, do you think the skill set that tour managers build on the road is an adaptable skill set, and it's something that would potentially work in your world?
Am I answering me? I'm answering that, or as a whole? Nick Light, yes. If you've got touring experience, your resume is better than the other guy, without question. Touring and living this gypsy lifestyle, you know, people think, you know, oh, you're going on tour, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe, but it is tour business. It is finance. It is accounting. It is responsibility of time management. It is the ability to communicate with a union foreman that, you know, is local one in New York City to, you know, Clive Davis at Sony. You need to be able to change hats quickly and be accepted by all. So I think somebody who's got touring experience would far outweigh somebody who didn't, because I know if I look and say, oh, you tour manage X, Y, and Z, I know, one, you're on time. I know, two, you take responsibility for the work you do. I know you're not going to hand me a bunch of excuses. I know you're going to get it done. Well, those 5 qualities, you can do just about anything in the world. I mean, that's all I'm looking for. And then the 6th quality is, can I stand being in a room with you for the next 16 hours? But, you know, tour people gravitate to tour people.
That's a big one. Yeah, I've definitely hired folks because they have amazing attention to detail and demeanor and love to have them in the room. And if you have that kind of person, you can teach them to do some things.
Right. What I find different now, nobody wants to take responsibility. You made a mistake, you fucked up. Okay, I got it. No big deal. You know, I said to new people I hire, so if you come to work in my department, I would tell you, I would rather have you book the wrong flights to the wrong city, book the wrong rehearsal space, the wrong backline, and the wrong hotels, than sit there and say to me when I came back, well, I didn't do anything because I was waiting for you to tell me what to do.
Interesting.
You can fix a mistake. I cannot fix apathy just sitting there. Be aggressive, take a shot. If it's wrong, we'll correct it. But doing nothing blows my mind. You know, and I find, you know, if you made a mistake, own up to it. I'm sorry, that's it. Okay, great, move on, let's keep going.
So I'm a little bit jazzed to ask this question.
Sure.
My junior self, my fledgling manager self, who for years had the greatest bands, and what we were going to do was we were going to get a record deal and get some unicorn tour support.
Yeah.
So let's talk tour support. I'm excited to chat with a label guy about some tour support. Let's talk about it.
Find it for students, because it's
right.
not
So tour support is a mythical animal that was thrown around in our business previously as some financial support for touring. And it was a very, very generous give back in the day when bands were coming up. The first thing that they would do was, you know, they'd make a record and then they would get some tour support, which would allow them to go on tour. These days, tour support does not allow you to go on tour. It is a supplemental reinforcement. So let's chat about exactly what it is.
When your contract is done and you have a good manager, most likely you're going to have tour support worked into your contract. But there is a little clause in there that it is mutually agreed upon tour support. Just because it is in your contract does not mean I'm signing over a check for 200 grand and have a Coke and a smile and there you go. We will look at your budgets very carefully. We will examine what you're doing, and does this tour make sense? Is it the right thing to do at this particular time? If it is, we'll absolutely give you the money. What I don't think a lot of these young bands understand, tour support is recoupable. That means I get that money back before you guys start seeing royalty checks. So the more tour support you spend, the more you're digging into your royalties and you have to pay me back. But yeah, I mean, there is tour support. You have to support these bands to get out there. You gotta, a label wants you to win, but they want to be smart with that money.
Do you have a standardized list of sort of things you definitely think are tour support worthy and things that you absolutely don't think are tour support worthy? You know, things you might cook up or things that the act might come up with.
There are plenty. We have some standards, but as I had said earlier, I'm a road guy, so I understand the gray area. You know, we can say as a flat Sony policy, I don't pay for assistance on the road. So, you know, you know, Elvis is going out on tour and he wants to bring, you know, Red West as his assistant, I'm not paying for Red. But let's be real honest here. It might be in my best interest to have Red out there. This, you know, Red keeps Elvis sober. He keeps him on time. He keeps him all together. So yes, he's an assistant, but for an extra few grand a week, it's in my best interest to have him there. So yeah, there's exceptions to every rule. I just don't like seeing the money wasted, because what'll happen is you're going to have a shot and you're going to think this is a great tour idea and you really want to go do it. And you're going to fight to spend this money. And now you've spent $75,000 to do a tour in the Midwest during the middle of winter, during the biggest hailstorm you've ever seen. And, you know, nobody's buying tickets, nobody's going out, and you wasted that money. And right when you get home, you're offered the opening slot on the Beyonce tour. And now there's no money left. You know, the money is, tour support is there, but we really want to use it wisely. We don't want to waste it. So,
how do you work with tour managers and managers to put their tour budgets together? And do you let them know to factor in the tour support, or do you ask them to leave it out? How would you play that?
Interesting. So how it works is, let's say, again, I'm sending Elvis on tour. The tour costs $1 million. He's going to earn 800,000 in ticket sales, figure another 100,000 in merch. He's short $100,000. Well, if that's the case, we'll look at all the budgets and numbers and say, you know what, it makes sense. We'll give you a tour support of 100 grand. Now, when a younger act is going to go, I will, as I said, I give the manager the same speech. Fair and honest with me, fair and honest with you. If you're young and just starting out and you're doing this tour and it's financially going to come up short, do you want me to take a crack at doing your budget? Because I know how we can save. I will offer to do that budget for you. If you have an A-line tour manager, I will shut up and stay out of the way. If you've got a manager that knows what he's doing, I'll stay out of the way and we'll agree on a number. Sometimes it's just flat out, listen, I'm in for 75 grand. That's my final number. You got to make it work. I don't care how you make it work, but you need receipts to account for $75,000, and away you go. I offer it always, so it's up to management what they want to use and don't use.
And go ahead, Mary.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mary Jo.
Is that something that a touring director from most labels would help with, or is that specific to you having touring experience?
Most of the people that do what I do at the other labels have worked for me at some point. You know, Erica Spieldock, who is me over at Interscope Records and who is amazing. I think she's better at this game than I am.
She was one of our guests previously.
She was my number 2 for 16 years. So she was taught the way I was taught, you know, and half the stuff we do, we came up with together. So yeah, most of the record companies have a similar background to mine. They should be able to handle the budgets, be able to take care of all of that for you.
Yesterday when we were chatting, you sort of gave us a really finite way to kind of understand what's recoupable and what's not, because that's going to be important when you're talking about a budget.
Right. The easiest way to think recoupable and not recoupable, as Sony, if I call you, Mr. Manager, I want you to do this. Well, if I'm calling you and asking you to do it, I'm paying for it.
And it's not recoupable.
Not recoupable. It's coming out of my pocket.
Because the label wants you to support the efforts by doing so.
If you're asking me for money, odds are that's going to be recoupable. It's the easiest way to look at it.
All right. Amazing. So you're a fan of bands putting in the work.
Yes.
And being responsible for their somehow taken a little bit of control for their own trajectory.
I'm going to say probably this is probably going to get me in trouble, but auto tune is not an instrument. Okay, you got to play. You know, master your craft. You know, if you're lucky enough to be around a band, I mean, a real band where 5 or 6 players are all in sync and firing together, and it's a magical experience to be around that. I mean, to feel the energy of a band firing on all cylinders, it's magical. And I hope everybody in the world gets a chance to be around that, because it's an undescribable feeling.
Amazing. All right, over to 5-1.
Hey, Nick, you said yesterday that you like being connected with the crew as much as possible when you're coming out to see an artist on tour. Is this because of your background in touring?
I'm more comfortable with crew people. I like tour people. I like people who tour. There's a mentality. There's a road warrior spirit. There is an us versus them sometimes. It's a camaraderie that's it's a universal bond. I mean, it's like, I would think if you've done your time in the military, basic training sucked, but you're bonded for life with anybody who has gone through it. So yeah, you know, I like being around crew guys. I like being around road guys. The stories are great. The conversation is never dull. The madness that happens out there on the road is always fun and exciting. So.
And how are you breaking that mold of people on the tour when you come out and people are going, oh, the label guy is here?
Yeah, unfortunately, the image of the ego-driven, you know, overly privileged record exec is a hard thing to shake. I think I told you a story when I was working with Bon Jovi. I remember a very distinct moment in time where I crossed over from being label guy to being an inside guy. And it happened at the Count Basie Theater in New Jersey. The crew had broken, and there were road cases lining the hallway from the stage to production to the dressing room. Well, the crew was at dinner, and Dave Davis, who was acting tour manager at the time, came out in the hallway and was like, damn, we got to move these boxes. Well, okay, Dave, let's move them. I rolled up my sleeves and I stacked road cases for 40 minutes. And if anybody thinks John doesn't know, John doesn't see that, John sees everything. And it was at that moment I crossed over from just being a label weasel to, you know what? Nick's willing to get dirty. They know. An artist knows, and a crew knows if you're legitimately one of them or you're an idiot, you know, trying to be, don't you know who I think I am? You know, they know. You can smell it coming a mile away. We've all dealt with them.
Yeah, it's crazy sometimes. Sometimes when the heads of the top brass come out, it's as if the you know a king royalty is coming in, and you know, they make so many provisions to make sure it's smooth.
Listen, one of my close friends lost his job for a label chairman thinking he was royalty. And I will tell you what happened. You'll probably figure out who I'm talking about, but we were playing Radio City Music Hall. And if you know Radio City Music Hall, coming out of the stage door into the crowd, that's aisle 1. The next aisle over would be aisle 2. Well, the seats they were sitting in were close to the center leading to aisle 3. So they wanted to walk up aisle 1, come down aisle 2. Well, aisle 2 was closed by security for God knows what reason. And this label exec lost his mind that how dare you tell him he can't go down this aisle, and took it out on the guy who ran the department, and he lost his job for that. Now, that is the ultimate in ego and the ultimate in power play, but sometimes they get that way. I don't understand why. I think you get a lot more being a nice guy and saying please and thank you than trying to be, don't you know who I think I am? So,
Nick, that's also why you have a long career in this business too, and others don't.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, and I'll refer to my brother again on this one. I see how some of the power players in the industry roll. We've all seen it. But where I watch my brother Rob will see 6, 8 shows a night, drive himself, nobody's waiting for him, walks in, walks out, shakes hands, parks his car, and so there's just a level. And you know, if Rob can do it, everybody can do it. So it's been a great role model for me.
And then, it's a perfect segue from role models into something we like to do for our students on Thursdays is and ask our guests is mentors. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your mentors and the importance of mentorship that have kind of gotten you to this point?
Well, the biggest and best out of any of it, I give to my father. My father always left me feeling I could do anything. He left me with a feeling, no matter how bad it got, I could always come home. And just having that support, knowing that Dad said it's okay, to me, that was the gold ticket. I could do anything. The worst that's going to happen is I'm going to go back with my father. Great. That's where I want to be. Outside, you know, my brother is huge because, you know, he's a guiding light to me. Outside of family, 2 big mentors to me were Jim Gierno, who was the head of artist development at A&M Records and manager of Rebel Waltz, and Larry Butler. Larry Butler, to me, is the godfather of artist development and touring. He was the man I looked up to and tried to model my career after. I think in honestly 30 years of knowing Larry, I've never seen him lose his temper. I've never seen him lose his cool. Always smooth, and there's a way to get it done. I will say with Jim, working for Jim Gierno, he let me explore the more creative ways of getting things done. I was given a lot of latitude. So, but they were, you know, those 4 men to me, my dad, my brother, Jim, and Larry, those are my heroes. They helped me.
You know, what you said there about being given a lot of latitude to learn and grow. I mean, I wrote down about 4 or 5 points from the lessons I think I've learned today, and that was maybe one of them of you know, I wrote down having high standards for yourself, trusting people that you work with who really trust you to think outside the box and just, you know, to deliver. But I wrote working on both sides of the table, worked on all sides, and then putting in the sweat equity. But I wanted to ask you, straight up of like, what's the advice for the next generation now coming up, and what advice would you give to not only tour managers but any like that are starting, but also people like us that are looking to grow and maybe level up in our careers?
Well, for the absolute new guys coming in, ask. I get it. You went to school and you went to the Syracuse Newhouse program and you studied touring in class all day long and you did mock budgets and you did, you know, we talked through this scenario. That's not real life. Okay. And I hate to admit it, when you have to pay a police captain to be on the other side of town, they don't teach that in class. You got to learn that the hard way. When you have to adjust to certain things, ask. If you see somebody who you admire, ask to talk to them. I mean, all of us, we all want to spill our guts on this stuff. We have great stories and stunts we've pulled, but ask. I mean, most people I think would be happy to tell you and talk about their story. You know, I find sometimes the younger generation, because colleges now offer, you know, music touring programs and production programs, I see some kids come in with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. You know, I went to Full Sail and I know. Okay, but you know what? I've been doing this for 30 years and I don't know. So Full Sail taught you, please teach me. I think you need to be open to accept, you know, accept some of the tricks and the shortcuts and the rules and lessons the older generation knows. They learned it the hard way. Take advantage of that. Ears open and mouth closed. That's number one. You know, give your word. I take a lot of pride, and this is all ego talking right now. I take a lot of pride when I say I'm going to deliver on something, I'm going to deliver. You know, I gave you my word, it's going to be done. I would like to believe people know, oh, Nick said it's going to get done, it's going to get done. I think your word is everything. Going to Harvard is not going to guarantee your word means anything. You got to build that through trust and delivering on what you said. And I take a lot of pride in that. That to me is everything. You can't trade on that. That's just 100%. You earned it.
Right.
Yeah, and you make a fantastic point there, and it's something that we can all relate to, because I can happily speak for all my co-panelists on here and say that we've all learned something from one another in the time we've been doing this, and our experience ranges from 10, 11 years in this industry to 30 plus years in this industry. So, you know, we as TMs live in a bit of a bubble when we're on the road. So it's been really nice to share with one another and also other people in other areas of our industry like yourself, to get a different perspective on what we're doing. And it is really nice to know that us roadies have representation at the upper echelons of the label, like yourself and Erica. So, you know, it's really nice to hear that people are, you know, batting for us in a way at the boardroom level. And, you know, you said something that really struck me yesterday about being a blue collar guy in a white collar. And I really like that. That you, can you share just in wrapping up here, can you share with us like a favorite touring story of yours, something that really stands out?
I told this yesterday, and I will confess to it after it being a secret for 30 years. We were doing a band called Jesus and the Mary Chain at the Ritz in New York City in August. And it being August is very important to this story. August in New York City can be 100 degrees with 96% humidity. We did the show, and to say Jesus and Mary Chain was not the most pleasant band, they weren't the most pleasant band to me. All right. Well, so the opening act of the Jesus and Mary Chain came out that night with a 14-pound pig head on a stick, which they got from a slaughterhouse. They actually went to a slaughterhouse in Brooklyn, literally a pig head, you know, the whole ears, the whole bit, and came marching out with it on a stick. And then when their set was over, it was tossed to the side of the stage. Now, the band was being very difficult all night long, so it's time to load out. Somebody took the pig head and put it inside the kick drum and quickly sealed the kick drum back up into its case and loaded the drum case out and packed it into the front of the truck in New York City August heat. So this was a Saturday. So that van sat in New Jersey for 5 days before their next show.
Roasting,
fermenting. And I will admit now, after 30 years, that it was me. I was the one who stuck that head in the drum case and it into the
PM 101, where legends and secrets come to light.
And now let's bring in Curly.
Right? Yeah. Curly, who told the original story.
You know, the antics that happen out on the road, it can be some of the dumbest. I mean, it could be, you know, as silly and stupid as a carton of milk. But the 7 of us on this call right now, we have that bond. It is a magical moment that whatever that carton of milk was, that is now turned into the running joke of the tour, that I'll bring up 30 years later, and all of us will instantly be back to where it happened. To me, is the greatest gift you can ever have in this job. It it is the most magical career path you could take. Look at what we get to do for a living. I mean, if you're anybody listening today is thinking about getting into this career, thinking that this is the job you want to do, you know, I'm lucky where I said my father always had my back. My father would say, go. What is the worst that can happen is you'll come home. Try touring, be out there. It is the most magical experience you will ever have. I mean, this, you know, when did I ever think I'm going to play wiffle ball with the Rolling Stones? Never. You know, I remember doing a show. I'm a huge Springsteen fan, walking down a hallway and Bruce grabbing me by the arm. All right, you got to write the set list tonight. And I'm trembling. I'm writing a set list with Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, holy shit.
And the important thing to know is that Bruce writes that set list himself in his own handwriting every single night, and it's never the same. I know that from my relationship as tour manager for Clarence Clemens for years. This is a thing. It's a thing. So if he asked you to participate in that, that's a thing.
So, you know, the experiences are amazing. You know, one of the favorite acts I got to build from early in my career was Michael Bublé, and Michael was a singer on a cruise ship. And you look at the time and the sweat and everything you put into that, to see him now, it's unreal, you know. And I'll walk into a Coliseum and he'll be on stage, you know, doing sound check, and everything will stop. And he'll run over and give me a bear hug that is the greatest. It's just a magical, magical career to have. I beg you to try and be a part of it. I really do.
Is there any video of this wiffle ball match with the Stones? By
there
the
might
way?
be, yeah. There actually
We'd
might
like
be.
to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
I can ask Monty, the old Ritz guy, but yeah, there might be.
Steiny wants to know. Yeah, Steiny wants to know too.
Yeah.
So I want to take a couple of quick questions. JP, one of our regulars, has a question about how you handle a tour budget when there's a 360 deal involved.
Let me explain the 360 deal and be very clear. They are so separate. A 360 deal is basically when you sign to a record company, the 360 deal states we get a piece of everything you do. So you're a singer-songwriter, but now you're going to do a video game. I get a piece of that. You're a singer-songwriter, but you're doing merch. I get a piece of that. You're doing tour dates. I get a piece of that. You want to build a restaurant based off the album you just recorded. I get a piece of that. Now, some of you might be saying, you absolutely do not deserve a piece of anything I do because you're the record company. Well, let's be realistic here. From zero to megastar that you're selling a tour on your own, me as the record company funded you to a tune of $10 to $15 million. We put that money in to build you. I don't know if a promoter is going to invest that type of money in a career to build an artist. I don't know if a manager is willing to put up that kind of money to help grow an artist. Do I think it's fair that we get a piece of the 360 deal? Yes, I do. Will people fight against it? Absolutely. But the 360 deal does not affect tour support. Okay, so if you have contractual tour support of $150,000, that's, as I said, it's mutually agreed on tour support. That's your money. You do what you got to do. I don't take a cut of tour support.
But that's your recoupable money.
Yes.
because again, your money. Yeah, it's your loaned money that we're going to.
But I am not taking. I am not dinging you 5% on that loan.
True.
As fee for 360 money.
True. Yeah. Okay. Patty would like to know if there's anything you would have done differently in your trajectory or at any point.
No, I had the greatest run ever. I am so grateful for the times I've had. No, I wouldn't have done anything different. I was led by the best. I got to do some of the greatest shows I've ever seen, and it's been an amazing ride.
Are there any questions, any burning questions that we haven't seen? Any dangling commentary?
just before we wrap, I'd like to put up a word of support for my compatriots in the Jesus and the Mary chain.
Do I have to answer for this now?
People are not paid for 100% humidity in mid-August in New York. So
Yeah.
Wait a second. Let's be real clear. Let's be real clear. When this Jesus and Mary train pig head incident happened, I was an 18-year-old kid. I was a kid. I will make good on the pig head and the drum if they want it replaced. I will gladly do that.
Such fabulous stories.
On episode 25, where you can hear Michael Curly Jobson tell the story from the other angle.
I would love to hear that because I'm going to go pull that up now.
Madison says no regrets. Indeed.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Well played. Well played.
What's his,
Management
what's his
101,
version?
breaking the stories.
Can you tell me his version of the pig head story?
I just
Doug,
remember
do
it
you
coming
know?
up.
Yeah. Oh, Curly's?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it came.
I think
came
I think
up.
it's better if you look at the episode and listen to it from Curly himself, because it will put it all
Did
in
he talk about
perspective
it
for
during?
you.
Did he talk about it during the episode?
Yeah, I don't know that he talked about it during the episode. Did he?
I
don't
thought
remember.
that he had mentioned it in passing, at least, though.
Well,
We'll have
if
to-
anybody
right.
talks to him, you can rat me out.
We'll go review now.
Very funny. Very funny.
Thank you so much for joining us. I've loved this a lot. We've learned a lot from you, and look forward to keeping in touch with you, man. Because I think you're a great advocate for touring and are doing wonderful things at the top brass level of the label. So keep it
And
up.
thank you so
Thank you very
much
much.
for availing us of your
Yeah.
time so
Great.
generously.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all our students. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you guys. Zoom wave.
Zoom wave.